Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I have another vintage quilt block for you. This one is called Mother's Choice, and I made it in shades of red and pink. And this is an intermediate level block because of all the pieces in it and the fact that you have a lot of points to match. So I think this is doable as long as you can do flying geese units that have square triangles, and there's nothing complicated about the units in it. It's just matching all of those points and the fact that it has a lot of pieces. So that's why I'm calling this one an intermediate. Anyway, I hope you will join me and I'll show you how to put this block together. Here are the fabrics that you're going to need to make the Mother's Choice block. For your dark fabric, I chose red for this block, and you need, for your A square, it's one square that is 4.5 inches. For B, you need 12 that are 2.5 inches square. For C, you need 2 that are 3 inches square. For D, you need 12 that are 2.5 inches square. E, you need 2 that are 3 inches square. F, you need 12 that are 2.5 by 4.5 inches. And for G, you need 4 that are 2.5 inches square. First thing we're going to do are make the flying geese units. So we need our D squares and F rectangles, and we're going to make some flying geese units, and then we're also going to need our B squares. So this is what we're going to use to make our flying geese units. So first thing we're going to do is let me move these out of the way here. These flying geese units have two different colors on them, so you have to place them in the correct place. Your D triangles are going to be on your right side, and your B's are going to be on your left. So light is going to be on the right and dark is going to be on the left. So I'm going to adjust the camera and we'll start sewing these together. Okay, so I have my F rectangles here, and I have my D squares. These are the 2.5 inch squares. These are going to go on the left side of the rectangle. So I'm going to chain piece all of these together. On the right side, we're going to put the darker squares, which are the B squares. So I'm going to line everything up, and I'm going to stitch from the center to the left bottom corner. And I'm using my seam guide, and you can draw a line on here if you want, whatever works best for you. For me, using the seam guide is quicker, so I'm going to do that. And what we want this to look like when we get done is this. So we want to have the pink on the left and the red on the white. Now you can use whatever color combinations that you like. You don't have to use the pink and red. I actually did the instructions in 2 shades of blue, but I didn't have 2 shades of blue that contrasted well enough to do that, so of fabric. So I decided to use pink and red. So we're just going to make all of these the same. So I'm just going to chain piece everything. Okay, now I'm going to cut all of these apart, and then I need to trim them. Okay, so I need to trim off this outer corner, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance, like that, and then I'm going to press it back so that we will have this. Okay, so now I have all of my rectangles with one side on, and I add this side. So these are the B squares, and I'm going to do the same thing, right sides together, and I'm going to stitch from the center, the top center, to the right lower corner. Okay. Alright, so once again I'm going to cut these apart, trim and press, and we'll have our flying geese units done. Okay, now we're going to make half square triangles using our E and our C squares. You know, on the back of the E's I drew a diagonal line from one corner to the opposite corner, and I'm going to stitch a 1/4 inch away from each side of that line. So I'm going to pair these up, and this will make 2 at a time, so I have a total of 4. Okay, so I've got, let's place these right sides together, match up the raw edges, and then I'll stitch a 1/4 inch away from both sides of that drawn line. Now I'm going to cut on that drawn line, and it'll give us 2 half square triangles for each, so I'll have a total of 4. So here we are, and now I'm going to press towards the red. Okay, next thing we need to do is trim down these half square triangles to 2.5 inch squares. So I'm going to use, I have a 5-inch ruler here, and I'm going to line up the seam with the diagonal line, and I'm going to line up the edges with the 2.5 inch mark. So let me use this corner, because I've got 1 inch, it goes from 1 out on this corner. So let's go to 2.5, and this is an Omni grip ruler, and there won't be very much to trim off of these, just a tiny bit, but it will be more accurate. So that's just all I needed to trim, was just that little amount. So I'm going to do that for all of them. And the 2.5 is a black line on here, and I can see it from right there. So now I'm ready to lay out the block. Now when you press these half square triangles, if you press 2 towards the dark and 2 towards the light, you'll be able to nest these seams. So for these 2 pieces, these seams will nest because this is pressed towards the light and this one's pressed towards the dark. and when I turn this one over, these two will nest, and that will give a better point down here. So you can check your rows to see if you've got your seams pressed the way you want them, and if they're not pressed the right way, then you can repress them. Anyway, I am going to sew all of these together, and then we will work on the outer rows. Okay, so I'm going to work on this top row and do the first 2 pieces, and I am nesting that seam together. Okay, and then the next 2 pieces in the next row, I don't have to worry about which way those seams are pressed. So I'm just going to sew right through that. And then the next 2 pieces, or the first 2 of the last row. Let me line up my raw edges. Okay, let me put my scissors here. Okay, so what we have is we get a nice point right there when we have the seams pressed that way. So I'm going to open this up and then add the last piece for each row, and you can clip these apart if you want, or leave them connected. I'm going to leave them connected and see how that works for me. I normally take them apart because all of this pulls and it just bugs me sometimes. So. Okay, then this flying geese, just have to make sure I've got the base, the geese part actually up against the square. And the opposite colors. And I've got that seam nested in there. Okay. Okay, so we've got threads to trim. So now I'm going to press, and then we will sew this together. And I'm going to press these seams out, the middle in, and the outer seam, bottom seams out. Okay, so now I've cut the pieces apart, and I'm going to sew these first 2 rows together, and I have a point here and a point there, and those need to match. So I'm going to put them right sides together, and I'm going to put a pin right through this point and through the point here, and line these seams up. They should nest together. Just make sure that pin is straight out, repin it, and then do the same over here. So if your seams don't line up right here, that's not as important as those points matching, so don't worry about that too much. Like I have here, I've got all this extra showing, but we'll see how this turns out. So I just line up my raw edges here, and we'll sew. aiming right for the top of that point. And I get these raw edges lined up here. Okay, let's see how that went. Ooh, okay, that's looking pretty good. So, okay, I'm going to sew the bottom row on, and just making sure, whoops, I dropped it in my lap. Just making sure I have the geese part of the flying geese unit towards the center of the block there. Have it facing, and I'm going to place my pins in through the points, line it up and nest those seams together, and pin. Now this may feel awkward the first couple times you do this, but you get used to it the more you do it. So I found this to be the best way for me to get my points matched up. Okay. Okay, let's see how this one turned out. That's pretty good too. Okay, so here is the center of the block. So we need to do one more row around it. So let's go ahead and lay that out. Okay, so here we go. So for the next row, we need the G squares and the rest of the flying geese units. So the G squares are going to go in each corner. So we have 4 of those. And the flying geese units are going to go in the opposite direction now. So we're going to match the colors up here. So what that's doing is kind of giving it a diamond shape here. I'm holding my breath, making sure until all these match up. Good, that worked. Okay, so this is the final layout. Now I'm going to sew this into a row, this into a row, and then sew these 2 together on each side, and then sew all the rows together. I'm going to sew the side rows first and then the top row. So I'll adjust the camera and we'll do more sewing. Okay, so I'm going to sew the corner square onto this flying geese unit. And I want to do these one at a time instead of chain piecing them so that I don't get them out of order. Okay, these 2 flying geese units, I need to match up the seams here. So these seams are going in the same direction. So I can't do anything about that because of the way flying geese units are made. Of course, I could press this seam down actually. So or I could do the other one. No, the other one won't go. This one will. Okay, so I'll press this one down. Okay, so I pressed this seam towards the geese unit. This one is pressed up like we normally do. So as you're going along and putting this block together, if you need to press your seams a different direction, go ahead and do that. There's no rule that says you can't. Or if there is, there shouldn't be. So let me get my thread there. Okay. All right, so here I got a nice point right there. So now I'm going to sew on the square to this side. Okie doke. Okay, so there's the top row, and I will press that in a moment. I'm going to do the bottom row now. Alrighty, and the square. Okay, so there's the bottom row. Now I'm going to sew these other flying geese, the side flying geese together. Okay, so that goes there. Okay, so I'm going to press all these rows. Okay, so now I have all the sections sewn, and now I'm going to press. I have these seams pressed open. So they're not a concern, and what I need to do is to sew these sides on first. So I'm going to go ahead and press these seams open also, and we'll go from there. And you can see on here where I switched the way that seam was pressed. It was pressed this way like I normally do flying geese like this. They're all pressed out towards the triangles, but to get these two pieces to nest, one seam needed to go up and one needed to go down, so I repressed that one that direction. So I'm going to, I did that with all of the sections where two flying geese were sewn together, like in this one here too. So I'm gonna, these little squares here, I'm going to go ahead and press to the side. Those aren't a concern. It's the seams here that I was worried about. So I'm just going to go ahead and press them open. Though it's probably not going to make a whole lot of difference. And my air is about ready to kick on again, so it's getting noisy. Now after I get all of these seams pressed, I'm going to sew on the side sections to the block, the short sections there. And there are a lot of points to match on this round of the block, so I'll be matching the points of the flying geese to the seams in the main section of the block and vice versa. So all of those points and seams have got to match, and so I'll be doing a lot of pinning to get that to work. Okay, I am putting on the last 2 rows, so this will be the top and the bottom, and I need to match seams and points, so I'm going to do that and pin them in place. So I've got 2 seams here, and then I have to match this point with this seam and all the way across, so there are quite a few points to match here. Now I have points on both sides, so I can't see them. I can't always see them. Like I can't see that one because it's on the back side, but hopefully my pinning has been accurate and things will turn out pretty well. And actually that looks pretty good. So let's do this one here. And I'm going to go back and do lots of pinning. I need to press, and then the block will be done. Okay, here is the completed block, and I think it turned out pretty well. So this one was a little bit harder to do than some of the others. It's all of these points that you have to match, and you know, it's just a lot of pieces, but this is a really pretty block, and just use it in whatever color combinations you like. This one I did in red and pink. You could do it like in 2 shades of red, 2 shades of blue, 2 shades of green, you know, whatever you like. And I think it would look really pretty. Well, that's it for the Mother's Choice block. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you will click that like button if you did, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.